Have you ever had a love so pure that you believed it would last forever? This is the story of Elena and Matthew, two souls who found each other in the innocence of childhood, but whose destiny had prepared a twist that would change everything they thought they knew about love. Elena was barely 8 years old when her family moved to the small town of San Miguel de los Flores, a place where everyone knew each other and secrets seemed impossible to keep. It was the summer of 1995, and she arrived with her messy pigtails and a shy smile that would soon conquer the heart of a boy named Matthew. Matthew Rodriguez was the typical adventurous boy of the town. At 9 years old, with his tousled hair and always scraped knees, he was known for climbing the tallest trees and knowing every secret corner of San Miguel. But the day he saw Elena getting out of that green car, something changed in his world of mischief and adventures. "Do you want to be my friend?" were the first words Matthew spoke to Elena, while she shyly observed the playground from her new house's window. There was something in the direct and honest way he said it that made Elena feel she had found something special. From that moment, they became inseparable. Elena discovered that behind Matthew's adventurous facade was a sensitive heart that wrote little poems and cared for a stray cat he had named Captain. Matthew, for his part, was fascinated by Elena's imagination, who could invent fantastic stories about anything, from a stone to a cloud. They spent their afternoons in their secret place, an old treehouse that Matthew's grandfather had built years ago in the big oak tree in the backyard. There, among whispering leaves and filtered sunbeams, Elena read her invented stories while Matthew listened with bright eyes, lost in every word. "When we grow up, we'll get married," Matthew declared one September day, with the seriousness that only a 9-year-old boy can have. Elena, with her blushing cheeks, nodded shyly. "And we'll live in a house by the lake, with lots of books and a garden full of flowers," she added, completing the dream they shared. Their families watched this special friendship with tenderness. Elena's parents, Maria and Carlos, had come to the town seeking tranquility after difficult years in the city. Seeing their daughter flourish alongside this sweet boy gave them hope. Matthew's mother, Mrs. Carmen, a wise and loving woman, always said, "These children have something special. True love is recognized from childhood." The years passed like pages from a storybook. Elena and Matthew grew up together, sharing every stage of their development. When Elena learned to ride a bicycle, it was Matthew who ran beside her, holding her steady. When Matthew broke his arm falling from the tree, it was Elena who comforted him and read him stories during his recovery. In high school, their friendship naturally evolved into something deeper. At 15, they shared their first kiss under the same oak tree where they had spent so many childhood afternoons. It was clumsy, sweet, and perfect at the same time. "I love you, Elena," Matthew whispered, and she felt those words contained all the truth of the universe. But fairy tales don't always have happy endings, and destiny had different plans for these two hearts that had found love in its purest form. The end of high school arrived like a silent storm that no one saw coming. Elena and Matthew, now 17, had planned their future together with the naive certainty of young lovers. They would study at the same university, get married after graduation, and build the life they had dreamed of since childhood. However, life had other plans. Carlos, Elena's father, received a job offer in Barcelona that he couldn't refuse. The economic crisis had hit the town hard, and this opportunity represented the stability his family needed. The news struck Elena's heart like lightning. "I can't leave," Elena told her parents that night, with tears streaming down her cheeks. "My life is here, with Matthew. He is my future." But Maria, her mother, hugged her with the pain of someone who must make difficult decisions. "Daughter, you're very young. If your love is true, it will withstand the distance. And if not, it's better you know now." The news devastated Matthew. For days, he wandered through the town like a lost soul, visiting all the places where they had built their memories. The treehouse, the small cafe where they shared milkshakes, the bridge where they had carved their names. Mrs. Carmen found him one night crying in the garden, hugging the guitar he had been learning to play for Elena. "Mom, how can I let her go?" Matthew asked with a broken voice. Carmen, with tears in her eyes, caressed his hair like when he was a child. "Son, true love sometimes means letting go of the one you love so they can grow and be happy." Elena and Matthew spent their last weeks together desperately creating memories, as if they could stop time. Photographs, letters, small gifts they would keep forever. Matthew wrote her a song he titled, "Until You Return," and Elena gave him a diary where she had written all the stories they had created together. "Promise me you'll wait for me," Elena asked him the night before leaving, while they sat in their secret place in the tree. Matthew took her hands and looked into her eyes. "I promise there will be no one else. You are my only love story. And I promise I'll come back," Elena replied. "When I finish university, I'll return and we'll get married, just as we planned." They sealed their promise with a kiss that tasted of salt and farewell, engraving in their hearts the moment that would sustain them through the coming years. The morning of departure was devastating. The entire town gathered to say goodbye to Elena's family. Matthew arrived with a rose he had cut from his mother's garden, the same variety that Elena had admired since childhood. "So you don't forget me," he said, though both knew forgetting was impossible. "Write to me every day," Elena asked him as she got into the car. "And you to me," Matthew replied, memorizing every detail of her face. The car started slowly, and Elena kept her gaze fixed on Matthew until she disappeared among the mountains surrounding San Miguel de los Flores. Matthew ran to the oak tree and stayed there until the sun set, perhaps hoping it had all been a nightmare. But Elena was gone, taking with her the light of the town and leaving a void that seemed impossible to fill. The first months were sweet torture. Letters arrived daily, full of love and nostalgia. Elena told him about Barcelona, her literature studies, the new experiences she was living. Matthew wrote to her about the town, his correspondence engineering studies, and how every corner reminded him of her. But distance is cruel, and slowly, the letters began to space out. Studies, new friendships, different routines started creating an abyss that young love struggled to keep closed. Without knowing it, both were changing, growing in directions that would take them away from the dream they had built together. 5 years passed like leaves carried by the wind. Elena had become a successful editor in Barcelona, working for a prestigious publishing house. Her life was exactly what she had dreamed, surrounded by books, stories, and the vibrant energy of the city. But there was always something missing, a void that neither professional success nor new friendships could fill. Matthew, meanwhile, had become the most respected engineer in town. He had modernized the water system, designed new bridges, and earned the affection of all the inhabitants of San Miguel de los Flores. However, at night, when work was over, he would sit in the treehouse and play guitar, always interpreting the same song, "Until You Return." Communication between them had gradually stopped. There was no fight, no reproaches. Simply, life had taken them down different paths, and both, without telling each other, had decided it was better to let go of the past than maintain a hope that seemed increasingly distant. Elena had had some relationships in Barcelona. Interesting, intelligent men who admired and respected her. But she always ended up comparing them to a bright-eyed boy who had promised her eternal love under an oak tree. "You have to forget your town," her best friend, Sophia, told her. "That childhood love is preventing you from being happy." Matthew had also tried to rebuild his life. He had dated some women from the town and neighboring cities. Beautiful and kind women who saw him as the ideal man. But none could compete with the memory of a pig-tailed girl who invented fantastic stories and had promised to return. Mrs. Carmen watched her son with concern. At 22, Matthew was a successful and attractive man, but he lived as if waiting for something that might never come. "Son," she would say, "Elena hasn't returned. Maybe it's time you opened your heart to new possibilities." "Mom, I promised to wait for her," Matthew would reply with the same determination he had as a child. "And she promised to return." Promises mean something. Meanwhile, in Barcelona, Elena struggled with her own demons. She had received job offers in London and New York, opportunities any editor would dream of having. But something held her back. Every time she thought about moving further from Spain, she felt as if she were betraying a fundamental part of herself. "Why don't you go back to visit him?" Sophia suggested one night while they shared wine on Elena's balcony. "Maybe you'll see that you've idealized the memory and can move forward." Elena shook her head. What if I go back and he's moved on with his life? What if I'm no longer the same person he remembers? Pride and fear had become invisible barriers that separated them more than physical distance. Elena had built a new identity in Barcelona, had become an independent and sophisticated woman. How could she go back to being the girl she had been in San Miguel de los Flores? Matthew, for his part, had become the pillar of his community. He was the exemplary son, the respected professional, the coveted bachelor. But inside, he remained the boy who had lost his best friend and first love, and who didn't know how to live without that hope that had sustained him for years. Elena's parents visited the town occasionally, and always brought news of their daughter. She's doing very well, they would tell Mrs. Carmen. Successful, independent. She seems to have found her place in the world. But Carmen, with a mother's wisdom, noticed something in their eyes that suggested Elena hadn't completely forgotten her past. One day, Maria, Elena's mother, found a hidden box in her daughter's closet. Inside were all the letters Matthew had sent her, photographs from their childhood and adolescence, and the diary he had given her. On the last page, written in a teenager's handwriting, was the promise she had made: I will return to San Miguel de los Flores and marry Matthew Rodriguez. That night, Maria called Elena. Daughter, I found something I think you need to see. Elena, on the other end of the line, felt her heart stop. She knew exactly what her mother was talking about. Destiny has mysterious ways of intervening in our lives. Elena had been avoiding the conversation with her mother about the box she had found for 3 months, when she received a call that would change everything. Her publishing house had decided to expand and look for new authors in small Spanish towns, authentic stories that would connect with the country's cultural roots. Elena, we want you to lead this project, her boss, Ricardo, told her. We need you to travel through different towns and find those unique voices that only exist in small communities. We'll start with Andalusia, but we want you to also include some towns from where you come from. Elena felt as if the universe was giving her a sign. San Miguel de los Flores was exactly the type of place they would look for in the project. She could return, but with a professional reason, without seeming like she had come back only for Matthew. It was the perfect excuse to face the ghosts of the past. 2 weeks later, Elena was driving along the winding road that led to San Miguel de los Flores. 5 years had passed since the last time she had traveled that path, and every curve brought back memories she had buried deeply. Her heart beat with a mixture of excitement and terror. The town had changed very little. The same stone houses, the same cobblestone streets, the same pure mountain air she had missed without realizing it. But Elena had changed. She was no longer the shy teenager who had left with tears in her eyes. She was a 23-year-old woman, successful, independent, with elegant clothes and a confidence she had gained through years of hard work. She decided to stay at the small-town hotel, a discreet place where she could plan her strategy. She didn't want to suddenly appear at Matthew's house. She needed time to process her emotions and decide how to handle the reunion. The first person to recognize her was Mrs. Carmen, who was buying vegetables at the market. "Elena! My God, how beautiful you've become!" the woman exclaimed, hugging her with the same warmth as always. Elena felt her defenses crumbling before the genuine warmth of Matthew's mother. "Mrs. Carmen, what a joy to see you," Elena replied, struggling to maintain her composure. "I'm here for work, looking for local stories for my publishing house." Carmen observed her with those wise eyes that had always seen beyond appearances. "Of course, dear. Matthew will be so excited to see you. He still lives in the same house, you know? He never moved. He says he likes the oak tree in the yard." Elena felt a stab in her heart. The oak tree. Their secret place. Would it still be special to him, or had he shared that space with someone else? "How is he?" Elena asked, trying to sound casual. Carmen smiled sadly. "He's fine, working hard. He's the most respected engineer in town. But, well, you know him better than anyone. Some hearts never forget." Elena spent the rest of the day touring the town, visiting the places of her childhood. The house where she had lived now had new tenants, but the garden still had the same flowers her mother had planted. The cafe where she shared milkshakes with Matthew was now run by Don Antonio's daughter, who recognized her immediately. "Elena, what a surprise! Matthew comes here every Friday after work. He always sits at the same table where you two used to sit as children." Each revelation was like a dagger to her heart. Matthew had maintained the traditions, the places, as if he had frozen time waiting for her return. Elena felt overwhelmed by guilt and nostalgia. That night, from her hotel room window, she could see Matthew's house. There was a light on in what used to be his room, and Elena wondered if he knew she had returned. In such a small town, news traveled fast. She stayed awake all night, planning what she would say when they finally met. How to explain 5 years of silence. How to justify that she had built a completely new life without him. And how to deal with the fact that, after all these years, her heart still beat with the same intensity when she thought of him. At dawn, Elena made a decision. She would go look for him directly. No excuses, no professional pretexts. She owed him an explanation, and he deserved the truth. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple but elegant dress that reflected the woman she had become, but wouldn't intimidate the boy she had known. She walked through the cobblestone streets toward Matthew's house, feeling that each step took her back to her most authentic self. But when she turned the corner and saw the house, she stopped dead. There was a young woman sitting on the porch, and Matthew was beside her, laughing while caressing her hair. Elena felt the world wobble beneath her feet. She had arrived 5 years too late. Elena remained paralyzed behind the corner tree, watching the scene that destroyed all her expectations. The woman was beautiful, with long curly hair, musical laughter, and a familiarity with Matthew that spoke of intimacy and shared time. He seemed relaxed, happy in a way Elena hadn't seen in years. Her first instinct was to flee. Return to the hotel, pack her bags, and go back to Barcelona without saying anything. She had been a fool to think that time would stop to wait for her. But something held her back. Maybe it was the need to close the circle, or maybe the curiosity to know who this woman was who had taken her place. She breathed deeply and walked toward the house. Seeing her approach, Matthew stood up so quickly he almost knocked over the chair. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the years disappeared. Elena saw the 9-year-old boy who had offered her his friendship, and Matthew saw the pig-tailed girl who had illuminated his world. "Elena," he whispered, with a voice broken by emotion. "You've come back." "Hello, Matthew," she replied, struggling to maintain her composure. "I'm sorry to show up like this, without warning. I'm here for work." The woman approached with a warm smile and introduced herself. "I'm Andrea, Matthew's sister. I've heard so much about you that I feel like I already know you." Elena felt her knees give way with relief. Sister. Not girlfriend, not wife. Sister. "Sorry," Elena said, feeling ridiculous. "I didn't know Matthew had a sister." Andrea laughed fondly. "I arrived 3 years ago. I'm adopted. My parents died in an accident, and Mrs. Carmen took me in as a daughter. Matthew has told me all the stories of his childhood with you. He even showed me the treehouse." Elena felt a mixture of emotions, relief, embarrassment, and something like jealousy knowing that another person had known their secret place. But Andrea's warmth was genuine, and Elena immediately felt comfortable with her. "Well, I'll leave you two alone," Andrea said with a knowing smile. "I imagine you have a lot to talk about." She gave Matthew a kiss on the cheek and hugged Elena. "I hope you'll have dinner with us tonight. Mom Carmen will be delighted." When Andrea left, Elena and Matthew were alone for the first time in 5 years. The silence stretched between them, full of unasked questions and contained emotions. "Would you like to sit down?" Matthew asked, pointing to the bench where he had been with Andrea. Elena nodded and sat down, maintaining a prudent distance. "You look different," Matthew said, observing her with eyes that had matured but retained the same warmth. "More elegant. More adult." "You've changed too," Elena replied. "You're taller, stronger." Mrs. Carmen told me you're an engineer now. Yes, I finished my degree by correspondence. I design bridges and water systems for the town and nearby communities. Matthew paused. And you? How has Barcelona been? Elena told him about her work, her studies, her life in the city. But as she spoke, she realized she was describing someone else's life. The successful woman from Barcelona seemed like a fictional character compared to the girl she had been in San Miguel de los Flores. It sounds like an incredible life, Matthew said, but there was something in his voice that suggested melancholy. I always knew you would do important things. Matthew, Elena began to speak, but he interrupted her. You don't have to explain anything, he said softly. I understand why you stopped writing. I understand why you didn't come back. You found your place in the world, and that place wasn't here. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. It's not that simple, Matthew. I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped wondering, what if, But not enough to come back, he replied, without reproach, just with deep sadness. I was afraid, Elena admitted. Afraid that you had changed. Afraid that I had changed. Afraid that what we had was just a children's fantasy. Matthew moved closer and gently took her hand. Elena, what we had was real. It was the most real thing in my life. But you're right about one thing. We were children. And children grow up. Is there someone else? Elena asked, surprising herself with her own boldness. Matthew shook his head. There have been encounters. But no one serious. No one who makes me forget the promise I made to you. Elena felt her heart break and mend at the same time. Matthew, you can't live in the past because of me. It's not your fault, he replied. It's my choice. And I don't regret it. They remained silent, hands intertwined, looking toward the oak tree that had witnessed all their secrets. Elena realized she had returned not only to find stories for her publishing house, but to find the answers she had been seeking for 5 years. Can I stay a few days? She finally asked. For work, but also, for us. To understand what we are now. Matthew smiled for the first time since she had arrived. I'd love that. But neither of them knew that their reunion was about to reveal a secret that would change everything they thought they knew about their past and their future. The following days passed like a golden dream. Elena and Mateo walked the paths of their childhood, shared meals at Grandma Carmen's house, and slowly rebuilt the bridges that time had weakened. However, something in the atmosphere of San Miguel de los Flores seemed tense, as if the entire town was keeping a secret that only they didn't know. Elena noticed it first in the glances. Dona Mercedes from the grocery store would look away when she passed by. Don Aurelio, the postman who had worked in the town for decades, seemed uncomfortable every time he saw them together. Even Aunt Rosa, her late mother's sister, maintained whispered conversations with other women that would abruptly stop when Elena appeared. Don't you think it's strange? She asked Mateo while they had breakfast at the small-town cafe. It's as if everyone knows something we don't. Mateo frowned, absent-mindedly stirring his coffee. Small town, you know. There are always rumors. But Elena knew that look. It was the same one Mateo had as a child when he was hiding something. Her heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and foreboding. That afternoon, she decided to visit Aunt Rosa. She found her in her garden, watering the geraniums with mechanical movements, as if she were lost in deep thoughts. Aunt Rosa, Elena approached slowly. Is everything okay? Everyone seems different with me. The older woman stopped dead in her tracks. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the watering can on the ground. Elena, dear. Her voice broke. There's something you should know. Something that maybe I should have told you years ago. Elena's heart stopped. What? Rosa guided her to the small porch of her house, where they sat in the old wicker chairs. The silence stretched between them like a heavy shadow. When you left for Barcelona, Rosa began with a trembling voice, It wasn't the only time you tried to communicate with Mateo. Elena looked at her without understanding. What do you mean? The letters, Elena. The letters you sent during the first 2 years. The world stopped. Elena felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. What letters? I never. They arrived here. All addressed to Mateo. More than 20 letters in 2 years. Rosa couldn't look Elena in the eyes. I intercepted them. The revelation hit Elena like a tsunami. Her mind filled with confused images, the nights she had spent writing letters she never sent out of pride, the times she had been about to call but stopped thinking Mateo didn't remember her, the years of silence she had interpreted as mutual indifference. You intercepted my letters? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Elena, your mother, before she died, she made me promise I would protect you. That I wouldn't let anything prevent you from building your life in Barcelona. She knew that if Mateo responded to you, you would come running back and give up all the opportunities you had there. Elena stood up abruptly, trembling with a fury she had never felt before. You decided for me? You decided to separate us. Elena, please, understand. Does Mateo know about this? Rosa shook her head, tears running down her wrinkled cheeks. No one knows. But the town, some suspected. They've been waiting for this moment for years. Elena ran out of the house, her world completely destroyed. It wasn't 5 years of mutual silence. It was 5 years of undelivered letters, of love expressed on paper that never reached its destination. 5 years of misunderstandings orchestrated by the family that thought they were protecting her. She ran to Mateo's house, but stopped at the door. How would she tell him this? How would she explain that she had tried to contact him, that she had never forgotten him, that each letter contained pieces of her broken heart? Mateo opened the door before she could knock. One look at her face was enough for him to understand that something terrible had happened. Elena, what's wrong? She collapsed in his arms, sobbing with an intensity that surprised her. Mateo, I wrote to you. I wrote to you so many times. And between tears and broken words, she told him everything. Mateo's expression gradually transformed from confusion to understanding, and finally to a contained rage she had never seen in him. 20 letters, he murmured, as if he were processing the information. 20 letters I never received. Mateo, I thought you didn't care. I thought you had forgotten me. He hugged her tightly, his own voice broken with emotion. Elena, every day of these 5 years I wondered why you hadn't tried to contact me. Every day I thought maybe I had dreamed how special what we had was. The truth hit them like a devastating revelation. They hadn't been 2 young people who had forgotten each other. They had been 2 souls who had tried to stay connected, separated by decisions that others had made for them. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Her love for Mateo had intensified, but also her pain for the lost years. And now she had a new question that tormented her. What else didn't she know about her own story? The confrontation with Aunt Rosa was inevitable. The next day, Elena arrived at her house accompanied by Mateo, who had insisted on being present. Rosa was waiting for them on the porch, as if she had known this moment would come. Where are the letters? Elena's voice was firm, but Mateo could see the trembling in her hands. Rosa got up slowly and went into the house. She returned with a shoebox that Elena recognized immediately. It had belonged to her mother. With trembling hands, Rosa handed it to her. I kept them all, she whispered. I never could throw them away. Elena opened the box with her heart pounding in her chest. There they were, more than 20 envelopes with her teenage handwriting, addressed to Mateo. Some were yellowed with time, others still retained the perfume she used to wear in Barcelona. Mateo took a letter at random and opened it. His eyes filled with tears as he read aloud. Dear Mateo, it's been 3 months since I arrived in Barcelona. Every day I think of you, of us, of the promises we made under the mango tree. Do you remember what we said? That distance didn't matter, that our love was stronger than any obstacle. His voice broke. Elena took another letter, dated a year later. Matteo, today I turned 19. I spent the whole day waiting for you to call me, for you to remember. I know it's silly, but I still have hope that these years of silence are just a nightmare I'll wake up from soon. Each letter was a testimony to the love that had persisted despite the separation. Elena had shared her achievements, her fears, her dreams. She had told him about her studies, about the nights she spent crying in her small student apartment, about how each sunset made her think of San Miguel de los Flores. Elena. Matteo hugged her as she held a particularly heartbreaking letter. This changes everything. Changes what? Rosa approached, her eyes swollen from crying. Elena, you had a brilliant life in Barcelona. You had opportunities you never would have had here. Your mother wanted. My mother had no right to decide for me. Elena exploded. And neither did you. Do you know what these years have cost me? Do you know how many nights I stayed awake wondering if what we had lived had been real? Matteo stood up, his calm nature finally giving way to the magnitude of the betrayal. Mrs. Rosa, with all due respect, you had no right to do this. These are years of our lives we can't get back. But look at what you've achieved, Rosa tried to defend herself. Elena, you're a successful editor. You have a bright future. A future I built believing I had lost the love of my life. Elena headed toward the door, but stopped. And now I discover that he was writing to me mentally while I was writing to him on paper. That we were both suffering unnecessarily. That afternoon, Elena and Matteo took refuge in the place that had always been their sanctuary, the mango tree where they had carved their names when they were teenagers. Elena's heart sank when she saw that the letters were still there, faint but visible. Matteo. Elena leaned against the tree trunk. I need you to know something. These 5 years, they weren't easy for me. I had relationships, I tried to move on, but there was always an emptiness I couldn't fill. Elena, you don't have to explain anything to me. Yes I do. Because I need you to understand that emptiness had your exact shape. That every man I met was measured against the memory of what you and I had been. Matteo took her hands. I also tried to date other people. Andrea always told me I should move on, that I couldn't live waiting for a ghost. And why didn't you? Because every time I tried, I realized it wasn't fair to the other person. My heart had an owner, and you were far away, but you were still the owner. Elena cried silently, not from sadness but from a complex mixture of relief and pain. Do you realize what we've lost? 5 years where we could have fought together for this relationship. 5 years where we could have built something beautiful. But also 5 years where we became the people we are today, Matteo reflected. Elena, the woman who returned to San Miguel de los Flores, is stronger, wiser, more determined than the girl who left. And maybe we needed this time to be sure of what we feel. Do you think it was worth it? Matteo looked directly into her eyes. If it means we can now be together knowing that our love survived 5 years of forced separation, then yes. It was worth it. But Elena had a question that tormented her. What if there are more secrets? What if there are other things we don't know? The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Both knew that the revelation of the letters had opened a wound, but it had also raised a disturbing question about what else might have been hidden. The revelation of the intercepted letters had changed everything. Elena spent the following days in a state of constant emotional agitation, bouncing between fury toward Aunt Rosa and renewed hope about her future with Matteo. Andrea had been an unexpected ally in all this. When she found out what had happened, her reaction was one of total indignation. Elena, this is unforgivable, she told her while they prepared coffee in Matteo's kitchen. I understand that your family wanted to protect you, but stealing 5 years of your life, that can't be easily forgiven. What hurts me most, Elena confessed, is that my mother is dead, so I'll never be able to confront her about this. I'll never be able to ask her why she thought she had the right to decide for me. But you're alive. And Matteo is alive. And now you know the truth. Elena looked out the window toward the garden where Matteo was fixing a fence. Andrea, I need to ask you a question, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. Did Matteo really wait for me all these years, or is there something else I'm not seeing? Andrea stopped dead. What do you mean? I mean, it's very strange that a 27-year-old man hasn't had a serious relationship in 5 years. Especially someone like Matteo, who is handsome, intelligent, successful. Elena, he waited for you. I can swear it. But there was someone, wasn't there? Someone important. Andrea's silence was the answer Elena feared. Her heart sank. Who was she? Elena, I don't think it's my place. Andrea, please. After everything that's happened, I need to know the complete truth. Andrea sighed deeply. Her name was Sophia. She was a teacher at the town school. She arrived 2 years ago. Elena felt as if a dagger had pierced her chest. And what happened? She fell in love with Matteo. Completely. And for a while, he tried to reciprocate. They dated for 6 months. 6 months. Elena sat heavily in a chair. Elena, but he broke up with her. He told her he couldn't give her what she deserved because his heart belonged to someone else. She left town a year ago. She got a job in another city. Elena processed this information with a mixture of pain and relief. Did he mention me? Constantly. Sophia told me once that she felt like she was competing with a ghost. That no matter what she did, she could never be Elena. At that moment, Matteo entered the kitchen, immediately noticing the tension in the atmosphere. What's wrong? Elena looked at him directly. Sophia. Matteo's expression changed, and Andrea quickly excused herself, leaving the kitchen. Elena, I was going to tell you about her. When? After I fell in love with you again. Elena, what happened with Sophia meant nothing compared to what you and I have. But it meant something. Matteo sat across from her. Yes, it meant something. It was the first time in 5 years that I tried to move on. But every kiss with her reminded me that it wasn't your kiss. Every conversation made me miss our conversations. Did you love her? I tried to love her. She deserved to be loved. But I couldn't. My heart wouldn't let me. Elena stood up and walked to the window. Matteo, I need time to process all this. Not just the letters, but also Sophia. But also the decision I have to make. What decision? Whether to stay in San Miguel de los Flores or return to Barcelona. The question had been floating between them since she arrived, but now she had verbalized it. Matteo approached her. Elena, I can't ask you to abandon your life for me. Not after everything you've built. And you? Would you leave your life here for me? In a second. But I don't know if it would be fair to you. I'm a small-town veterinarian. In Barcelona, I wouldn't know how to be your partner in that world. Elena turned toward him. That's exactly the wrong answer, Matteo. If you love me, if you really love me, you shouldn't be willing to sacrifice everything for me. You should be willing to fight to find a way for both of us to be happy. And what would that way be? I don't know. But I need time to think about it. Without pressure, without expectations, without the emotional intensity of these last days. Matteo nodded, although she could see the pain in his eyes. How much time do you need? I'm going to return to Barcelona the day after tomorrow. Finish my work here, sort out my things, think clearly. I'll give you a definitive answer in 2 weeks. Elena, these have been the happiest days of my life in 5 years. But also the most confusing. I think you're right. We both need time to process all this. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She knew she was about to make the most important decision of her life, and she was afraid of making a mistake. But she also knew that, after everything they had discovered, she couldn't make a decision based solely on nostalgia or the passion of the moment. Her heart told her to stay. Her mind told her to return to Barcelona. But her soul told her to find a third option, one that no one else had considered. The return trip to Barcelona was one of the longest of Elena's life. Every kilometer that took her away from San Miguel de los Flores felt like a betrayal of her heart, but also like a necessary step toward clarity. Her apartment in Barcelona seemed strange when she arrived. The photos of her life there, the books, the furniture she had chosen so carefully, everything felt as if it belonged to someone else. As if she had been living someone else's life for 5 years. Her boss, Miguel, immediately noticed her mood when she returned to work. "Elena, you look different. Was the trip to your hometown difficult?" More than I expected. Elena sat in her office, surrounded by manuscripts to edit. "Miguel, I need to ask you a hypothetical question." "Sure. Would it be possible to work for the publishing house remotely? I mean, not completely remote, but maybe come to Barcelona 1 week a month and work from another place the rest of the time." Miguel looked at her with curiosity. "Are you thinking of moving?" "I'm thinking of all the options." "Elena, you're one of our best editors. If there's a way to make it work, we'll find it. But I need to know what you have in mind." Elena spent the following days researching. Would it be possible to maintain her editorial career working from a small town? Could Mateo establish a veterinary clinic in Barcelona, or at least near the city? Each option seemed to require enormous sacrifices from one of the two parties, and Elena realized that wasn't the answer. One night, while reviewing a manuscript about second chances, the irony wasn't lost on her. She received a call from Andrea. "Elena, how are you?" "Confused. Lost. In love. Scared. All at the same time. Elena, I need to tell you something. I talked to Mateo today." Elena's heart stopped. "What did he say?" "He's researching veterinary programs in Barcelona. He thinks maybe he could specialize in exotic animals or something like that. That maybe he could create a clinic that serves both the city and the nearby towns." Elena felt a mixture of excitement and terror. He would do that? "Elena, that man loves you in a way that's scary. But he's also scared. He thinks maybe you've grown too much, that maybe he's no longer enough for you." "Enough for me? Andrea, he is. He's everything I've always wanted." "Then why are you in Barcelona instead of being with him?" It was a simple question, but it hit Elena like lightning. Why was she in Barcelona? Why had she fled instead of staying and fighting for what she wanted? "Because I'm afraid," Elena admitted. "Afraid that if I sacrifice my life here for him, I'll regret it later. Afraid that if he sacrifices his life there for me, he'll hate me later. Afraid that our teenage love can't survive the reality of being adults." "Elena, can I tell you something you might not want to hear?" "Yes. I think you're afraid of being happy. I think these 5 years of pain have taught you to be comfortable with sadness, and the idea of being truly happy terrifies you." Elena was silent for a long moment. "How can you say that?" "Because that's what I see. You have the man you love willing to change his life for you. You have a boss who would be willing to create special arrangements for you. You have all the pieces to build the life you want, but you keep looking for reasons why it won't work." After hanging up, Elena stayed awake all night. Andrea's words resonated in her head like an uncomfortable truth. The next day, she made a decision. She went to see Miguel. "Miguel, I want to propose something to you. A pilot project." "I'm listening." "I want to open a satellite office of the publishing house in a smaller city. Something that serves local authors, that democratizes publishing, that allows us to discover new voices outside of Barcelona." Miguel leaned forward, intrigued. "Are you thinking of something specific?" "Yes. There's a town I know very well. It's 2 hours from Barcelona, has good connectivity, and is surrounded by a region full of stories to tell. I could spend 4 days a week there, and 1 day a week here in Barcelona. And is this personal or professional? Elena smiled for the first time in days. It's both. And I think for the first time in my life, that's okay. Miguel looked at her for a long moment. Elena, give me a detailed proposal. If you can prove to me that this can work economically, I'll seriously consider it. Elena left the office with an energy she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she wasn't trying to choose between two lives. She was trying to create a new life that was completely her own. 2 weeks later, Elena returned to San Miguel de los Flores with a proposal under her arm and a decision made in her heart. But this time, she didn't arrive fleeing from a life or romanticizing a past. She arrived as a woman who had found a way to build the future she truly wanted. Mateo was waiting for her in the same place where they had reunited, the bench in the main square. But this time, there was no anxiety in his face. There was a mature calm, the expression of someone who had also reached an important decision. Elena. He stood up when he saw her approaching. Mateo. She hugged him, and in that embrace there was something different. It wasn't the desperate passion of their reunion, but something deeper and more solid. How are you? He asked her. Better. Much better. And you? Also better. I have something to show you. Elena followed him to his truck, and they headed to the outskirts of town. Mateo stopped in front of a piece of land that Elena vaguely remembered. What is this? This, Mateo got out of the truck, is where I'm going to build my new veterinary clinic. Elena looked at the land with surprise. Your new clinic? Elena, these 2 weeks made me realize something. I've also been living in the past. I've been so comfortable in my small, safe life that I stopped growing. But if I want to be your partner, if I want to build a life with you, I need to be the best version of myself. What do you plan to do? A clinic that will be a regional reference. That serves not only San Miguel de los Flores, but the entire region. That has specialized services, that can collaborate with universities, that allows me to grow professionally without distancing myself from the roots I love. Elena felt immense emotion. Mateo, that's incredible. But there's more. I've been researching graduate programs in Barcelona. There's a specialization in exotic animal veterinary medicine that interests me a lot. It would be weekends and some intensive weeks. You would do that. Elena, I want to be a man who complements you, not one who limits you. I want to grow with you, not ask you to shrink to fit into my life. Elena took his hands. Mateo, there's something I need to tell you. I also have plans. She told him about the satellite office proposal, about the possibility of dividing her time between Barcelona and San Miguel de los Flores, about the idea of democratizing publishing in the region. Are you saying that? I'm saying I found a way to not have to choose between my career and my heart. I'm saying I want to build a new life, not recover an old life. Mateo hugged her tightly. Elena, are you sure? Because this means commitment. It means work. It means we're going to have to build this together, day by day. I'm sure. But I need you to know something else. What? I forgave Aunt Rosa. Mateo looked at her with surprise. How? Because I realized that resentment only hurt me. Because I understood that she did what she did out of love, even though she was wrong. And because I realized that if I hadn't spent these 5 years in Barcelona, I wouldn't be the woman I am today. Elena, you're incredible. No, we're incredible. Together. 6 months later, Elena was at the opening of the satellite office of the publishing house, installed in a restored colonial house in the center of San Miguel de los Flores. Mateo was finishing the last details of his new clinic, which would open the following month. Aunt Rosa approached Elena during the celebration. Elena, can I talk to you? Of course, Aunt. I want to ask for your forgiveness. Again. And I want to tell you that your mother would be proud of what you've achieved. Elena hugged the woman who had been like a second mother to her. Aunt Rosa, I already forgave you. But more importantly, I learned something from all this. What? That true love isn't the one that protects us from mistakes. It's the one that gives us the strength to overcome them together. That night, Elena and Mateo sat under their mango tree. The letters of their names had been retouched, but this time they had added something else: the date of their reunion. Elena, Mateo took her hand. Do you know what I like most about our story? What? That it's not a second-chance love story. It's a first-chance love story. Because the children who fell in love under this tree 10 years ago weren't us. We're completely different people now. And do you like who we are now? I love who we are now. I love that we have to get to know each other again, that we have to build this love from scratch but with the wisdom of what we've lived through. Elena leaned against his shoulder. Do you know what I like? What? That I finally understood that love isn't sacrifice. It's creation. It's not about giving up who you are for the other person. It's about creating a new and better version of yourself alongside the person you love. 1 year later, Mateo's veterinary clinic was a reference throughout the region, and Elena had published 3 books by local authors that had become national successes. But more important than their professional successes was what they had built together: a relationship based on mutual growth, respect, and the determination to create a future that was completely theirs. On the wall of Elena's office, there was a frame with the first letter she had written to Mateo in Barcelona, the one she had never sent out of pride. Next to it, there was another letter, the first one Mateo had written to her after their reunion, in which he told her it had been worth waiting for her, but it was even more worth building something new together. Andrea, who had become Elena's best friend, used to joke that it was the most complicated love story she had ever seen, but also the most beautiful one. Because you didn't settle for recovering what you had, she told them one afternoon while they had dinner together. You fought to create something you had never had before. Elena and Mateo looked at each other, and in that look there was something that hadn't been present in their teenage love, the certainty that they had consciously chosen to build a life together, not out of nostalgia or fear of being alone, but because they had decided that together they could be better than they were separately. 5 years after their reunion, Elena and Mateo got married under the mango tree where they had carved their names. But this time, they didn't carve a date. They carved a word: always. Not because they promised to love each other forever without changing, but because they promised to choose each other every day, to reinvent themselves together, to create new versions of their love every time life challenged them. And when their children would ask them years later how they had known they were made for each other, Elena and Mateo would tell them the truth: that they hadn't been born for each other, but had decided to become the people who could love completely and be loved completely. Because true love isn't finding the perfect person. It's finding the person with whom you want to grow, change, face challenges, and create the life you both dream of. And in San Miguel de los Flores, under the mango tree that had witnessed their first love and their definitive love, Elena and Mateo built exactly that: a life that wasn't what they had planned when they were teenagers, but what they had consciously chosen as adults. A life that was completely theirs.